You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast. Stories of overcoming obstacles and finding self-empowerment with Sherisse Bisram, Inner Power Activation Leader. The Oxford Dictionary describes permission as the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing, consent, authorization. What if you were that someone and you gave yourself the permission to be everything you wanted to be and more? No more playing small and accepting less than. You are worthy of the life of your dreams, regardless of what it is that you've been through. And honestly, it's exactly what you've been through that has shaped you into the version of yourself that you are now. Like a diamond, you've endured so much, but instead of breaking, you have become stronger and brighter. And if that's not a reason to shine, then I don't know what is. And if nature can do it, then why the hell can't you? You are brave, you are strong, you are powerful, and you are enough. Hear my call and give yourself the permission to shine, because you don't realise how many people are inspired by your light. Hi everyone, this is episode 21 and I'm really excited to introduce to you a very unconventional guest today, but she's full of so much knowledge and wisdom and exciting things to talk about, and this is Leela.
Hi.
Thank you for joining.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Would you like to say what it is you do? Because obviously it's so exciting and interesting. I can't wait to unpack it, but please introduce your title and what it is you do, all the things.
Sure. Well, I do quite a few things. First off, I'm a mindfulness and movement coach, an integral hatha yoga teacher. I also teach chair yoga. And then I just finished my death doula course, which is working with people who are dying and with their families, basically helping to integrate the process, figure out anything. I've kind of been calling it a death event planner. It's like kind of weird as that sounds, but that's basically what it is. It's this very big event in someone's life, and I just am there to help make it as smooth as possible, basically.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think it's so important and underrated. Like, I only really heard the term doula probably last year, and I was intrigued by it at that point. And I think for me, spirituality is a massive part of my life, and I've also been through so much bereavement in my life that someone actually said to me, oh, you'd be a really good like doula, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'd want to do that or not, but actually you might encourage me through the episode, so we'll just see how it unfolds and we'll go from there. But would you like to tell us about your life and your story, and like what led you to this space where you're in now, and what inspired it?
Definitely. I mean, there's so many different things that have happened. Specifically, though, I also went through quite a bit of loss. I had my oldest brother pass away in 2019, and before that, I was teaching yoga, and I had just done my second training, and I was doing workshops and things and moving forward. And then that happened, and I just got completely knocked off course. I didn't want anything to do with it. And I mean, that's just what happens. Like I had no support. And I don't mean that in terms of like, no one there trying. I just mean no like professional, actual, support. So I kind of just went off the rails for a while and ended up in some not very good relationships. But through all those things, I learned so much about myself. And at one point during the year, like way later on, I came back to healing. I stopped drinking for a while, and I started just doing more workshops and things. And I actually went to a workshop that I didn't know was led by a death doula. I didn't know what a death doula was. Well, she called herself a grief doula. But she led this grief workshop, and it was this insanely powerful night where I was just like, whoa, I was just hit with this. I was like, I've never heard anyone talk about death like that, really. And so I ended up working one-on-one with her for a bit. And even though I was going through it and not in the right mindset, I still remember thinking this would be a really cool job. Like being this person for someone is amazing. And obviously needed like quite a bit of time to work through everything for myself. but yeah, and then I kind of forgot about it for a while. And then I got a concussion a year ago. And again, got knocked off course, same type of thing. And it's kind of a theme in my life, as just like with most people. But after that concussion, I started thinking, I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? I'm clearly not in the right path in working in this like kind of corporate job and what I'm doing. So I pivoted and I remembered the death doula course, and I started looking into that. And I took a whole bunch of courses over the last 8 months, like a whole bunch of them. But the death doula one was the most intense by far, because they have you do so many visualizations of your own death, how that's going to feel, who's going to be there, visualizing the people that you love dying. It's a lot. It's a lot of inner triggers that you need to work with, so that by the time you're done, you don't end up being triggered and then kind of like throwing it on to the people you work with, kind of thing, trying to get it all out.
Yeah, amazing. It's so exciting and interesting, and I can't wait to dive into that part. But what I want to do before we do that is go a little bit further back in your life. So I feel like, obviously, you spoke about your brother, but do you think that before your brother, even in your childhood, that there was any elements of you that, because obviously you've gone into yoga for a reason. So I feel like, was there a calling for that? Was it like, were you searching for peace at a young age? Like, was there anything like that that connected you earlier, even before you got to that point where grief started to take over and led you down the path that you are supposed to be on?
Well, actually, I grew up in a family that was practicing yoga and meditation. And so basically, my mom was a disciple of Osho, who is super famous now. That documentary came out a few years ago called Wild Wild Country on Netflix, and it's very intense. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it's a lot. But he was a guru. And she lived on his ranch for 4 years before that all like broke apart. And then my dad is a disciple of Swami Satchidananda, and he opened an ashram in Virginia called Yogaville, which is cute, Yogaville. So I grew up, even as a baby, we would go visit Satchidananda and the whole ashram. And so I grew up being there from the time I was really little. He passed when I was around 12, but the ashram is still running. And that's where I took both of my yoga teacher trainings as an adult. So I would go back periodically here and there by myself just to go over the years, but it didn't really click. I didn't want to teach yoga. Like, that wasn't really anything that I thought of. But I mean, it's quite a long story, but I experienced a dream that was very vivid, basically telling me to go. And that was in, I don't know, 2017, maybe. So yeah, I did start off on that path as a kid, and then I got really, again, same theme, knocked off for a long time, and then came back.
I love that so much. I've never met anyone that's come from two yoga parents that have literally, lived and breathed the practice. That's so beautiful and interesting. And I guess maybe that's why it wasn't in your sights at first, because it was just part of, like, a natural part of what you were doing and what your family would do. And actually, sometimes when it's so ingrained, it's always like an element of rebellion, isn't it? It's like, I don't want to do that. And I guess that in some form of a way. But how incredible. And I guess by default, you're probably naturally super mindful and I guess cultured as well in a lot of different ways, because I guess that in those spaces you would have met lots of different people from lots of different walks of life.
I would definitely not say I'm naturally mindful. I would say the opposite. I'm like very high strung. I used to have a ton of panic attacks. I wasn't aware of my breathing. There are so many things that, again, the rebellion, I didn't want to listen. I pushed away. So it definitely did not come naturally to me. But yeah, as you said, there were so many people, and there are so many people that are so different and interesting. Like there's all of these swamis that live at the ashram who have taken a vow of basically poverty and, you know, so many different vows. And they, you know, they wear the full orange and that's their life. And I know some of them quite well. One of them I'm pretty close to still. She's kind of like an aunt. But it has definitely helped having different perspectives growing up, because it's funny because I just assume everyone has had the same upbringing as me, right? Like you just go around the world and you just make assumptions about people and you like personalize it, and you're like, everyone feels the same way I do, understands the same thing as I do. And then as you grow older, you start realizing, oh, that's not true. Like everyone has had a completely different experience. So it is really, I am really grateful for having those people in my life, because I do feel like I've had a different sort of level of learning from them.
Yeah, no, it's so beautiful. And I love that, you know, there is that element of rebellion in you that took you away from it. You know, like you were fighting against that and like, no, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be known for that. And then that dream was always like a prophecy, wasn't it? Like, come back to yourself, come back to what you know, your family, your lineage, all of these things, like connecting you back to fundamentally yourself, really, isn't it? And it's that oneness of, because I think that's the thing, I guess we're fighting always to be individual, to be seen as we are and to be accepted as we are, you know, but actually what we forget in that idea of that separateness is that we're still interconnected. And I think that's our maybe childhood way of thinking that that's what we need to do and be. Because I even feel like in everything I am and everything I've been in my life, individuality has played such a massive part of that, because I didn't fit in. I just didn't fit into anything I did. And I wore that flag, you know, so heavily that I'm, you know, my own, and I'm one of, you know, I do the things differently and all these things, which I do. And I honor that. But equally, I know that I'm still part of the universe and all of this collective energy. And I think that's a beautiful space to be in, is when you find that tipping point where there is harmony there, you know, like you can still be who you are, but equally connected to the world and the universe and all of those things, which I guess that yoga plays into that, and the mindfulness, right? It's that connection back to yourself and everything.
Definitely. And I've always felt the same way, where I felt like I didn't fit in, I didn't belong. I was, you know, very confused on where I stood with people. And so, but I did the opposite. I tried desperately to fit in and, you know, push everything that was unique down about myself. And I did that for, I mean, my whole teens for sure. And then probably into my like early 20s before I kind of was like, no, this is a strength. This is a definite strength. And I need to stop being so afraid of feeling judged or whatnot, because I also started realizing that it was just me. Like no one was really judging me. And if they were, then that, you know, it really wasn't about me. So at some point or another, I mean, I still feel that sometimes, where I'll be like, oh, I can't act like this or be myself or say this because this person will judge me. And then I'll question that and say, like, what evidence do you have that anyone is judging you right now? Is it you? Are you projecting this onto people?
Absolutely, that.
Say yes.
That's it, isn't it? Is it a me problem or is it a you problem? Like in a conversation, I'm like, that's definitely a you problem. Don't project that onto me. That's a you problem. But you're right. Even in your own journey there, I was the same. So through my childhood, I tried to conform and fit in, and even up to my early teens and mid-teens, and probably even into my late teens. And then that was when I started to slightly rebellion, and then it got more and more and more. And I would say that I purged the rebellion in my 20s of being like, oh, I'm just the way I am, you have to deal with it. And then I kind of got to my 30s and I was like, oh, why was I fighting so hard? Who am I fighting? No one. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, easy.
Exactly.
I've just been in that fight or flight response my whole life. That's all I ever knew. So I think when you can tell yourself, you know, you can take your fists down now, you don't have to be in that boxer pose ready to go all the time. That was such a revelation for me. And that's where I really truly believe I found inner peace in that moment, because I'm no longer my adrenal glands relaxed, you know, I'm not in that heightened response system anymore. I feel like accepted because I've accepted myself, and I think that was a massive part of all of this, and why it's important to teach it, I think, for me. And I'm guessing maybe you've had some sort of similarity in that.
Definitely. It is funny. Like I've been in therapy for a really long time too. So I've been working through these things for quite a number of years now, but it's funny that they still do come up sometimes. And I'll feel something, some trigger will happen or whatnot, and I'll be like, oh, there's that feeling again. And I just need to like feel it and breathe into it so that it can be here and then leave, instead of trying to avoid it. What I used to do, and what most people do, what we're not taught to sit and, you know, feel our feelings and cry and
absolutely
be angry. Like, that's all very negative. We're told, you know, don't do that, you're disturbing everyone, or whatever it is, the things that we're taught. But yeah, it's a big difference when you can just sit with it and go, no, this feeling is here and that's okay. And then once you do that, it takes away a bit of its power.
100%. I can't even stress that enough, because, you know, part of my story is a lot of my best friends hadn't seen me cry for like over 10 years. I just didn't know that was a thing. I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing. And then now I just need a moment and I'll just sob. I'm like, I just think 5 minutes, I'll be fine. And then after, I'm like, oh, I feel so much better. But that's what it is, isn't it? That's what crying actually is. It's your body's way of trying to stabilize your emotions. And I think for all those years, no wonder I was uptight all the time. I hadn't been releasing anything. But anyway, enough about me. Let's connect now with how the mindfulness and the yoga correlates with the doula stuff, because I feel like there is a common connection here that I can feel intuitively, but I'd love to hear your interpretation of it and what you've learned from the course, your experience. I'd love for you to just dive right in now. Go on for however long you need to. We're all ready for it.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I mean, part of the course was about mindfulness, which I think is really important. Some of the courses I looked into were very straight to the point, kind of bland, very like, this is how to contact a funeral home, this is what to do. Like, and I didn't want that. I wanted a more like spiritual, cultural learning, which is what I got. But the mindfulness is so important because it's just always important. It's just that is our true nature, is to be peaceful and breathing properly and connected. And we're just not, like, you know, most of the time, that's not what we're taught. That's not the society that we live in. It's not promoted. So for when you're grieving, going through a death, or, you know, anything to do with that realm, we're not taught how to handle it. We just have no idea. And the whole idea with the Death Doula course is they express that they're not teaching anything new. They're teaching exactly what we used to do 100 years ago, where we would integrate the death and the experience into our families and our lives and talk about it and feel it. And that's just what we naturally did. And then at some point, when hospitals and hospices came around, the death was removed from us. So someone would die away. They would never, you know, die in the home with us, around us. It's removed, it's separate. And what happens when something is separate is it creates avoidance and then eventually fear. So now we all have this kind of weird feeling, this uncomfortable feeling when someone even talks about a death or what they've gone through. And then that makes that person feel even more alone and alienated than they need to. But it's just because we just don't know how. So having a death doula there is, I think, just so important, because it's just teaching old practices that we've kind of lost and forgotten. And mindfulness is the oldest and, you know, most important one out of all of those things. So it's interesting. It's really nothing new, but it's new for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really, I think what you said there was like so on the head. And I feel like that's really what all of us that are practicing spirituality and teaching spirituality are really getting to the core of that fact that the Western culture has just pulled us so far away of our primitive, like tribal, natural ways of being, that it almost seems obscure to the younger generation that, you will sit down without your devices and have dinner. Even those little concepts seem so strange. And having dinner in your room, or, like that for me is just, even now, if I can have dinner with my family, I'll sit there and have dinner with my family. I don't want to have dinner somewhere separate. I feel like that's like a communal thing to do. So I think, that's so important and powerful to be able to, share that beautiful experience, because I think, again, the Western culture and society think that death is the end, don't they? They think it's like, that's it, off you go, you leave your body, you bury it or you burn it, and then that's it, whereas, my own interpretation of this, which is just down to my own experiences, and everyone will have their own version of this, is that, it's the soul leaves the body, but, the soul is eternal, my point of view. So I feel like, for me, this mindfulness part of this and the spirituality element that I believe in is that our soul came here for a purpose, whether it's to learn or to grow or to, complete the mission that it came here to do. And once it's done that, it can leave. And I think, and I believe that we have a soul contract that has to be fulfilled. So the people in our lives and all of these things are already contracted to be there. And that actually gives me a lot of peace, because I feel like at times when my life's been very hard, if I believe that, it makes me feel like everything had been worth it. And evidently I feel like through the transmutation of my own pain into, what I'd like to call power or alchemy now, is that it all makes sense. So I know that whenever that time comes that I do have to leave the earth, and because I've been so dedicated to my own practice, I feel like I'll be leaving happy because I've done what I came here to do. And I guess that's for me probably in what do they teach you in that is in, like, as the soul leaves the body, like, has there been any stories like through that, or like any revelations that have happened in that time frame? Was there any like profound moments in your learning experience?
Oh, I mean, there's just endless stories of, like hospice nurses or people who are around death a lot, experiencing all of those things. And it just, I don't even know if I can pinpoint one story. There's just endless stories. There's just so many. And but also I'm very aware that my role as a death doula is to not try and change anyone else's perspective. So if someone comes to me saying, we die, this is it, there's nothing else, it's not my role to talk about how I feel or what I experienced or what I believe. It's very much just supporting that person, because I think that we all have ideas of, and I share very similar views to you. And we all have, certain ideas, but at the end of the day, as a death doula, it's so important to just validate how someone is feeling in that moment without trying to change it, because most of the time we're trying to change people's opinions and views and things, right? And especially as family members, like, we view our family members the same way we viewed them since we were, kids or whatnot. And there's very little room for changing sometimes. So if someone is in that experience of dying, we might want to, fix or change or help or whatever, but really just being there and validating and saying whatever you believe is completely fine. Whatever you feel is completely fine. We're still here is the role.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you on that as well, because that's something that I'm aware of myself, as in having my own strong views. I try to always make it clear that this is my view. It doesn't have to be yours. And I think in that situation where it's so sensitive, of course, like, that your role is to support them, isn't it, through that difficult time. And I can't remember if you said this to me or it just came profoundly, but I feel like you may have said this to me. But it's almost like being a midwife, isn't it? Essentially what you're doing.
Well, they do call it a death midwife as well.
Yeah.
That's one of the terms. Yeah. Or an end of life midwife.
Yeah. It really does feel like that, doesn't it? Like that support for the passing of you know, and I guess in birth it's like coming into life, and this is like coming out of life, which is a really beautiful concept, actually. I think the idea that you can have that.
Exactly. They call it a delivery, right? Either way, there's a delivery coming in or there's a delivery going out. And it is so important to have like ritual and whatever. I mean, we've lost a lot of tradition and cultural rituals and things like that. But there's some people that are still doing all those things. There's a lot of cultures that still have certain practices that they do. And I think that's just so important because when you bring life into the world, you're just so conscious and mindful of, you know, what you're eating, how you're feeling, what you're doing. Like everyone around you kind of gathers. I mean, hopefully not always, but that's the ideal situation. And with death, we've kind of lost that. We've lost that same like coming together and supporting, and we don't know how. So it's just I would recommend, I mean, anyone even interested in taking the course for their own just experience. I mean, I would highly recommend it. There were lots of people in the course that I talked to who had no plans on using it for work or for really anyone else besides their own family, which I thought was amazing. There, you know, and also there were quite a few men in the course, which I mean, I was so happy to see. And especially I spoke with one who worked in film or something, and he was just saying that he was taking this course for, you know, his own family. And I was like, oh, you're like this, like, I don't know. It was amazing to me because, I mean, specifically men tend to shy away from those emotions and feeling and whatnot. But I think it's coming around. I think people in general are realizing how important these things are, and that we all collectively need support.
Absolutely. And I think that is the bottom line, isn't it, really, in that, is that it's the community aspect, isn't it, of it? It's like being like, oh, I'm going to be with you, the togetherness, the humanness. That I think I speak about humanness quite a lot because I feel like it's so missing in this world right now, you know. And don't get me wrong, like if you wish to find it, you can, but it's not as accessible as it once was, like, you know, even like 10 years ago. We've lost so much of that. So I think it's a really beautiful experience. And I guess maybe in that, I'd like to know, you know, you said you had to visualize your own death in that. What was your takeaway in that? Because that's really interesting. I'd love to just kind of, I mean, you don't have to go too much detail, but just as an idea of what was like profound from that moment.
Well, I mean, we did a bunch of different like homework practices around that. Specifically, there was one where we had to write out exactly where we wanted to be, who we wanted to be surrounded with, the type of music, like the temperature of the air, like literally everything that you can think of. And it's funny because, I mean, you know, we think about death and dying, sometimes it comes up, but I realized, I was like, I have no idea. I've never thought about this. I'm like, it's such a far away concept to me, but it's not. And that's also part of healing, I think, is realizing that it's just always here, whether, you know, you want it to be or not. It is here. And so doing those practices really helped me to integrate the idea that I'm not going to be here forever. I don't have unlimited time, and also that's okay. And there's one practice that I've been doing where I sometimes, like, I'll be, you know, going about my day and whatever, or like, you know, in an argument with my boyfriend about something stupid or whatever it is. And I stop and think and go, okay, if you were on your deathbed right now and you had the opportunity to come back into this moment, just this one, just right now, would you care about what you're arguing about, what you're upset about, or whatnot, you know, whatnot? And if I can consciously do that, it's always no, right? Like, it's always like, is this that important? No, but it's the remembering to do that that is, you know, the harder part. But I think that's also something I've learned is is to kind of stop and say, will this matter when I'm that old? Will I remember this? No.
Absolutely.
No.
And how beautiful is that concept as well? And I guess for yourself, you know, having experienced a lot of like big bereavements in your life, the same as me, I feel like that in itself gave me really that ideal. And that's from that moment in my life where I realized I am here to do big things. And obviously we get caught up in the trivial moments, don't we, in the little things, but actually I was always that person that would go out of my way to apologize, or, you know, do that extra thing. And what I've realized now in my own self-love journey is that not everyone needs to be apologized to. And, you know, sometimes it's boundaries I needed to set and things like that. But just having that deeper awareness that we're not here forever and it could go at any moment, I think is so profound. And I was really reminded of that recently as well. And it just really, again, put life into perspective for me and just reinforced the reason why I'm doing everything I'm doing now. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life and death, isn't it? Is it gives you that real sense of awareness of the present, you know. It's all we have, isn't it? Absolutely all we have in any moment. We can get excited about the future and we can dwell on the past, but ultimately we don't have any of those things. We just have right now. And I think if we lived each day with that, making the most out of every single thing, life would be richer for it. And I'm an advocate of that, because I feel like even this week I made such a massive point of just focusing on enjoying this week to its fullest. There's nothing special happening, but I just set that intention, and this week already has been one of the best weeks I've had all year, just because I was so clear on my intention that this week's just gonna be a great week. I'm just gonna have a great week this week, and I'll continue to do that for the rest of the year now, because I've always loved intention. But even more so, I think that we can always up it, we can always do more to enjoy the moment more and make the most out of everything. And it doesn't have to be bells and whistles or like great profanity, but I think if we can just ask ourselves every day, you know, in every moment, is this going to matter? You know, if I got, you know, hit down by a bus in 5 minutes time, would I regret that I made that choice or didn't say what I wanted to say or whatever? So I think that's a really beautiful concept of all of that. And that's how it ties into the mindfulness, really, isn't it? Because it's all about that, you know, connecting back to yourself and what truly matters. I think for me, I would say that for sure. But on that notion as well, obviously the podcast is called Permission to Shine. And I always like to ask my guests, you know, when in their life did they feel like was the moment they really truly gave themselves the permission to shine? Like in your life, with the courses you've done and the experiences you've had, where would you say that moment was for you?
Oh man. I mean, I forgot to mention in the beginning, but I'm also a singer and a songwriter. I play guitar, I do shows. And I would definitely say, like, immediately thought of music. I thought of the area that I give myself the most permission to shine would be just doing what I love to do on a stage and not worrying about the reactions of people or, you know, whatever fears come up for me. I've been doing it so long now that it's just so easy now. But I remember at the beginning doing that was absolutely horrifying, and I was not very good either when I started. So I guess it's in music would really be the area that I've allowed myself to do that.
And I love that, because obviously dance has been my background. So I feel like that element of performing and releasing is obviously connected to that. And do you feel like, obviously you allow yourself to shine in your career, but do you feel like you've given yourself to shine as a woman?
Well, that's a good question. I feel like I've had a lot of blocks in my life around femininity, and it took a really long time, like a really long time for me to change my views on myself as a woman with feminine energy and all of those things, and really value that part of myself, because I just pushed it away for so long and called myself a tomboy and, you know, just valued masculine opinions and things like that. But now I feel, I mean, I've been running women's circles and workshops with women and just being around other women who are, you know, going through similar things. I feel like so many of us carried all of this masculine energy, and So yeah, now I do feel like I finally come into valuing myself as a woman, valuing my emotions and feminine energy, and the fact that I'm not wired the same as, my boyfriend or, my other brothers or anyone. I'm just not wired that way. They go about life in a certain way, having certain thoughts and feelings. And the fact that I feel completely different I'm realizing is a strength, which I viewed before as a weakness. So yeah, I do feel that.
Oh, that was really beautiful. And I love that you mentioned that, because that was very much my experience too. Like, I think life, because of the obstacles obviously we've both faced, forces us to armor up, doesn't it? And then in that turn of pushing forwards, we adopt the masculine energy because we think that's what we need, it's our survival. And then actually being told or being around a situation or experience that makes you realize that you can actually take all that armor off and just be, and it's okay, is the most beautiful, I think, of all of it. It's that, for me, it's almost like that rosebud just like opens and you allow yourself to bloom fully. And I think that's really nice. And I felt that, almost that image came into mind as you were speaking, of like this flower blooming. So
yes,
really
and before
wonderful.
it was all thorns, just all
Yeah.
armor and
Me too, though. Me too. And I think that's probably why we've resonated so well together, because it's that commonality, isn't it? And I think that's the importance of this podcast, is to be able to share these opinions, because I'm sure there's so many women listening thinking, gosh, yeah, I was doing that. Because even if you were heavily in your feminine, but it was toxic femininity because you used to manipulate people to get your way, like there's lots of different variations. This doesn't have to be just the feminine and masculine, like stereotypical concepts to it. But I think that's the beauty of sharing, I think. And why I do this is because obviously we all have a common thread of, what makes us human, what makes us women, and all those beautiful things. But I would say, obviously you've mentioned a few times about the obstacles that you faced in your life. What would you say you've learned from that, in terms of, obviously every time you've hit a roadblock, was there a theme with why it was happening and what you did on the outcome of that?
Oh yeah, it's pretty much always because I've started doing what I thought I should do instead of doing what I actually felt called to do. Every time it's the same formula. And I get into a mindset where I go, oh, I need to be this person and act this way and do these things, because then I'll have people be proud of me, and I'll have people say that, she's on the right path, or this and that, or she's, whatever, like whatever validation I was seeking from other people, I would go towards that and be like, I should do this. This is what everyone thinks I should do. And every single time I do that, and there's always signs, every single time I've done that, there's been I at one point backed into a car. My car went into neutral, and it was so slow in a parking lot, and I scraped into the back of a car. It cost me $600 like that. And there were so many things over this time. Right before I got that concussion last year, it was 3 or 4 things that happened in a row. And every time I'd be like, oh, so angry at, whatever, the world. It was not my fault, right? It's everyone else's fault. And then I would just get into this blind, no, I'm going this way, even though everything's telling me that's wrong. And then something big happens. So I'm trying not to do that now. I'm like, all right, I've done that enough times where I'm now I'm it just clearly doesn't work. Trying to validate and, be validated by other people doesn't work. It just doesn't lead to anything good. It just leads to concussion or whatever you experience. So now I'm trying very hard to be like, am I doing this for myself, or am I doing that again? Everything I do, I'm questioning and saying, where is this coming from? What voice is telling me to do this right now? And I feel like I've finally figured it out and am staying on it. But I mean, also something big happens in your life and then you again get knocked off. So I think that's just being kind to yourself during those times. Like if there's people listening who are like, oof, I'm in that, like right now, the worst thing you can do is beat yourself up and be upset about it and angry. And, I mean, anger can help to like create movement, which is good, but as long as it's not directed at yourself, because that doesn't do anything, then I think it's just we just all have to go through it. We all have to experience it to realize, oh, this is not for me, and I'm going to redirect.
Absolutely that. No, I completely agree with you. And I've had moments myself in my own life. So it's funny how you were just explaining about the car situation, because I've had that a couple of times in my life where it's been a car, or I've had a crash or something like that. And it's like the universe or God, whoever you believe in, way of saying, what are you doing? Stop doing that. And I'm glad, because I could see that commonality in your life story as you were explaining. And I thought, I wonder, I was aware that you would know yourself, but it's always nice for the listeners to join the dots together, because that's something that self-awareness teaches us, right? Is that we can look back on our story and be like, that had to happen for that to happen. But I think for anyone that's stuck at the moment, like you said, you get caught up in the stuckness and you don't realize that actually this is part of a big picture of our lives, and it always happening because it's supposed to, as we said earlier, like the map of our lives or whatever. So yeah, I'm so glad that you found your way back to yourself and to the divine path that you're supposed to be on. I'm really happy for you, because yeah, it all feels in alignment with who you are now, which is so wonderful and beautiful. And you gave some really lovely tips there, but I guess on your own lived experience and things like that, what would be your kind of tips for anyone that maybe is in a similar situation to what you were in before, maybe feeling lost or grieving someone? Like maybe 3 tips that you would give to someone in that space.
I mean, the first would be, again, just to be kind to yourself, because we have, especially women, have a tendency to beat ourselves up when we don't feel like we're whatever it is, whatever the feeling is. It's not really real or relevant, but we choose to beat ourselves up and talk so negatively. And I would say, like, just watching that, and when those thoughts or ideas pop in where you realize you're saying those things again, be like, oh, I'm doing it again. I'm going to go like take a breath, have some tea or whatever it is, like just do something to recognize that those thoughts are not real, that they're not you, and that they don't mean anything. They're just there because it's a program that's been running forever, and you don't have to listen to it. And then the next one I would say is find community, find support, find someone that you can lean on, whether it's a coach or, some teacher or whoever it is, like just finding someone that you connect with that can support you, that can be there. Because if you're feeling stuck and you're stuck in that energy and whatnot, it's so helpful to have someone be like, hey, there's an out, there's a door over here, that maybe you didn't see before. Or therapists. Like, big fan of therapy too. I think therapy is really great to help you figure out your awareness of yourself and your thoughts. But also, I realized I got to a point in therapy where I wasn't feeling, and she would call me out constantly. She'd be like, are you feeling what you're saying? Because you sound very detached. So I think having multiple people, a therapist for the mind, and then someone for the body, someone that can help you integrate those feelings into your body and help them release, is super important as well. And then the last thing I would say, oh man, I mean, there's so many things to do. Again, I'm such a big fan of self-care and doing things for you, that whatever that is. Like I teach a lot of journaling workshops. I've been journaling forever, and I find that really helpful. But it's also, you can get into a loop where you're writing just kind of negative thoughts, and you can do anything like a positive or negative way, right? Like, it's easy for me to say journaling or, like meditating or breath work or things like that. But if you're doing it from a place of feeling not good enough as you are, and wanting to like drastically change and not valuing yourself, it's all going to be negative. Like, I think whatever you do has to come from a place of love and support within yourself. So I would say that is the main, making sure that what you're doing is being driven by a place of love instead of a place of not feeling good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of those things. And they're absolutely everything that I teach myself. So, I'm 100% behind everything you said there. And it really is like the greatest gift of, self-love, like we said about, just taking that time for yourself to let you know that you are the most important person in your life. So when you're feeling at your best, everything and everyone in your life will benefit from it. And it's just knowing that, yes, it's annoying to have to sit down with someone and talk about your feelings, or actually tapping into those feelings and letting yourself feel them, as you said, which I thought was so spot on. And I completely relate to that, because I used to tell my life story all the time, completely detached, completely emotionless. And that was like one of my big red flags for myself. I was like, why was I doing that for so long? And it was survival, but that's part of this journey. And even, like the journaling and all of that, that's a massive part of my life. But as you said, it's got to be for the right reasons, And I think when you trust and believe that, for me, knowing that I don't want to be the version of myself I was before. So the consistency for me, why I'm consistent and why I do it, is because I'm dedicated to loving myself deeper every day, so I can, give out more love to everyone else. And I think that's a really important part of why these practices are so important, for any job that you do, even if you're a parent or a friend or a wife, or, whatever your role is. It's so you can fulfill that role as fully as possible, because your cup is always full, because you're pouring into yourself. And I think, ultimately that's really all this is for, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's funny because I feel like we're finally waking up to that, to realizing that that's so important, because I don't think that the generations before us were taught that. Like, women weren't taught to, pour into themselves and, do all those things. That was not important. Like, it was very much about survival and, like pushing forward and all those things. And now I think we're finally realizing, oh, maybe we need to go back and deal with the root, because clearly like pushing forward and keep going without actually feeling and dealing with things it's not working anymore. It's not working for anyone. So it's just
and I was sorry, I was just going to say on that action taken and the doing is all the masculine energy, isn't it? And actually the feeling and being is all that feminine energy. And the world, as you said, is waking up to it. That's why we're calling it the rise of the feminine, because it's, everyone's embracing that for sure, 100%.
Yeah. And even for men, it's so important, because I feel like men have been taught forever not to feel and not to integrate, because that is, feminine or girly or whatever. And it's so ridiculous. Those concepts to me is just so ridiculous, because like everyone has a balance of masculine, feminine energy, no matter what gender you are or identify with. Like we're always like a balance. It's just the idea that we're supposed to be 100% like one or the other, or, or that masculine is always better than feminine. Like that's been a theme for society for a long time, for men and women. We're all like, don't be feminine, be this like, way. And women have adopted that, men, whoever else. And now I think so many people are like, wait a second, this is not working. This is just not working anymore. Maybe we need to integrate other types of feelings and energy.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm ready for it. I did, like, we've both of us here have done our own version of finding that for ourselves, and I can't wait for the more of the world to wake up to it. And I can feel it and I can see it, which is just so beautiful and wonderful. But to kind of round off, I mean, actually before that, I don't know if you're into astrology or not, but is yours, are you a water sign?
No, I'm an Aquarius sun.
I thought
a water bear. I hold the emotion.
Yeah, so I thought I pinned you as either Aquarius or Pisces, and Pisces was more dominant in my head, but for some reason, I thought either Pisces or Aquarius. So I just thought I'd throw that.
I'm a Scorpio rising, which is a water sign actually, which
Yeah,
I think I come off as a Scorpio a lot for some reason. I think the rising sign is what people see. So you're probably
that's
picking
it.
up on the water there.
Yeah, no, oh, it's interesting that. But
And
anyway,
what's yours?
I'm a Leo, so I'm a Leo sun and a Leo rising. So I'm
Oh,
like
that's a lot of
pure
Leo.
fire. Yeah. But
Yeah.
to round off the episode, we always finish with I call it soul to soul, and it's basically just like a message that you feel like either your younger self needed to hear or someone listening needs to hear. It could be a channeled message or however it comes across, but just something from your heart that you just feel like someone needs to hear today.
Be kind, because really you are still that little kid. And if you wouldn't talk to a 3-year-old kid the way you're talking to yourself, don't talk to yourself like that. Picture yourself as that little kid who's just learning and making mistakes and growing and trying their best, and speak to yourself like you're speaking to them.
No, thank you. That's really beautiful and so true, because we're our own worst critic, aren't we? And I think if we can, be kind to ourselves, and in turn, we're kinder to the world, aren't we? So, yes, thank you so much for joining me, Leela. It's been such a beautiful conversation. Where can we find you? What are you up to? Obviously, I'll put all of your description in the show notes, but just for listening right now, if anyone's driving, they can't have a look. Where can we find you and listen to your music as well?
Yeah, well, my Instagram is mindful, like 2 words, .lee. That's my kind of brand name that I'm going under, is mindfully, because my mind is always full. And then my website is mindfully.com. I'm running a lot of like in-person events in Vancouver, BC, in Canada. That's where I'm located. But I just starting to run some online events as well, including one called Community, like T spelled TEA, which I'm really excited about. And it's just going to be a place for us to, I'm going to open it up with a centering practice. And then we're going to drink tea for about 10 minutes. I just took a tea ceremony course, so it's like super ingrained in my head right now. We'll drink tea and kind of meditate, just integrate. It's a very healing practice. And then we'll just open up and be able to talk and connect. And that's the whole thing. That's just a very simple thing. So I can't remember the date and time right now, but
we can share it.
Yeah, we'll share. It's all on my website and Instagram anyway.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your beautiful light with my audience, and a little bit more of an insight about the richness of life, because I think that really is it, isn't it? When we understand death, we can appreciate life so much more. And I think that might even be the title. Let's see.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing. I love having conversations like this. I don't get to do it half as much as I'd like to. I want to talk to everyone like this.
Yeah, no,
Not
definitely.
everyone wants to do that.
Here's to more of that.
Yes, 100%. Thank you.